Okay, so I have the inventor posed now. So, oops, let me turn my sound off. I don't need to see the sound. Okay, you'll notice that they're both moving very jerkily, and the reason for them doing that is I've actually gone through. If I go to the inventor and I double click here and I right click and I go to tangents, I've changed all these to stepped. Okay, and sometimes it's good to look at it in a stepped format. That way you can see just the poses. You don't have to worry about the transition so much. Okay, and I'll even turn the audio on just so you can hear it with the audio.
I like your opinion. Damn these glasses. Well, it looks good to me, too. Hurry up, son. Time's wasted. I'm going to the John. Don't forget to check those tires. Damn these glasses, son. Yes, sir. I damn thee.
Okay, let me switch back to Steve. And I'm just going to double click, change the tangents back to clamped. Go back to the inventor, change his to clamped, and play.
Looks good to me, sir, but I like your opinion. Damn these glasses. Well, it looks good to me, too. Hurry up, son. Time's wasted. I'm going to the John. Don't forget to check those tires. Damn these glasses, son. Yes, sir. I damn thee.
Okay, so it's a different kind of feel that you get for it, but both have merit to look at, and both are pretty simple to look at. It doesn't take too long to go through and look at them. Now, as I'm doing this, you can see from back here, the guy is actually like too far back. Turn my curves back on, and I'm just going to go to my last frames here. There we go. I'm just going to push him forward. Okay, I always kind of zoom out and look at the body to see where the body is and see if that's still making sense. Okay. Alright, so now the remaining steps of this is going to be the same exact thing that we just did, except now we're going to be going in there and doing a finer review of all of these kinds of things. In this scene, it's very important that I have some interaction between objects, okay? And you want to get that interaction done in there. So before you even start to do any animation, I have another video that I have out, which is going to be part 3. It's kind of like a watch this one and watch part 3 before you even get into yours. But you should go through and watch it because there's so much interaction with the objects here that it's really going to become a vital role in getting this stuff to line up correctly if you have object interaction like this. Okay, if your characters are simply punching each other, there's not really interaction, but he's holding his glasses. In this case, he's holding it in his hand. In this case, he switches to the other hand. In this case, he puts them on his head, they fall. Okay, so you really have to get those things lined up. Also, Steve Martin has the dipstick that he's holding. I need that to make sure that's lined up as well. Okay, so make sure you watch both videos before even attempting to go into the next stages of this, because it's really important to get that. Okay, so the next stages are exactly what we just did. Like I said, we're going to go through and then start to set those in-betweens. Let me turn the sound off. We're going to set the in-betweens here and see what they're doing. So right now, him coming up with his hands at his side like that, we wouldn't want that. So we come, let's say, to 32. Let's go here to 32. Okay, can't really see what his hands are doing, but you can guesstimate what they're doing. Okay, they're not doing that. His hands are actually coming out. So pull his hands out like that. Okay, and I'll rotate them down like that. And I can see those hands at, let's see, right about here at frame 50. That's when his hands are starting to come up. So at frame 50, let's go to frame 50 here. His hands are not that high. His hands are like down here. So I'm setting his hands back down here. I rotate these individually. Some of the controls in the character are really nice because you can grab both of them at the same time and rotate them and they go the direction you think they would be going, and sometimes they don't. Alright, so now here he is at frame 50, and again he's looking at him in the eye this time, so I would want him to look at him in the eye. Okay, his shoulder's like hunched here. Let's pull this back down. And this one seems to be raised a little bit. And the elbow controls, let's pull this back. This back. There we go. So that looks like about what he's probably doing inside this pose. Okay, so I'm going to set a key. So now I don't have this smooth motion coming straight up. He kind of comes out and then goes up. Okay, now you wouldn't put your glasses on straight up like this. Boom, like that. Okay, if we watch how he puts his glasses on, they come out in front of him and he kind of glides them on. And you'll see there's actually some continuity issues. Here at 65, his glasses are on. Here at 66, they're not. He's just putting them on. Okay, so you kind of have to work around, you know, some of these editing effects. All right. So the moral of that is that his hands are not coming straight up; they're actually coming out. So I'd want to go, let's say, about here. And pull his hands out a little bit. Not crazy, you know, just out slightly. And rotate them into position. Okay, you'll see that this hand is kind of set up for his glasses. In this case, I'm not going to do the glasses, but I'll show you what the glasses look like on him. Okay, so we'll set a key there. So now we're coming up, going out, coming in. Okay, so it looks like he's putting his glasses onto his face. And that's what we want. Okay, so that's going to be the rest of the stage. I'm not going to go through every single thing here, but that's what we want to do, is go through and now set the in-betweens of what's happening here. Okay, it's still very rough. It's going to be very rough. We're still looking at these things and trying to get a sense of the timing of everything that's happening. Okay, so at 128, when he's bent over this thing, I can look at this and say, wow, he's actually, you know, maybe a little bit too close to this. Maybe I want to pull him back some. So I can pull him back some. Or I can say, well, maybe he's a little bit too hunched back. So I can adjust still the hunchback without affecting too much other stuff. Okay, and obviously reset my keys. Or he's not rotated enough, so I can always rotate him slightly with my master control and nudge him over. When I do this control, I don't have to set any keys. Okay. Now I'm also, at some point, I'm going to go through and set up, you see his feet are sliding. I'm not going to see that, but I will see that. Because if we look at it here, we can tell that his feet are sliding. Even though we can't see his feet, they look like they're sliding because there's no movement in the hip area. Okay, if he's on this foot, that's where the weight is. This leg's going to be straight. So as he switches to his other one, we should see the hips swap. We should see this thing kind of pop that way. Okay, so at some point we'll swap it this way and then come back to it. All right, so I'm going to go to, I'll save this, sure. I'm going to go to a later file. And this is still nowhere near being completed. Turn this off. But now you'll see that I have some of the props loaded in here. Here's Steve Martin with the dipstick. Okay, so he's holding it in there, pulls it out, and presents it to the guy. You can see it still needs some work. There's still, like, his pinkies intersecting. So let me go to that keyframe there, and I'll just pull that out, pull that up. There we go. And I can reset that keyframe. Okay, and then the inventor guy, he has this, you know, glasses thing going on. So at the beginning, we don't see his glasses. They're actually like inside his body. But my camera angle is going to be up here and up here, so I'm not even going to see that at the initial onset of it. So now he's taking his glasses. You can see how he's pinching the edge of it. And he pulls them out. And he slides them on. Oops. And then they fall down and he catches them. Okay. And then you can still see there's still work that's going to need to be done. But it's just, again, setting up the base of this. Setting up the base movement of it, and then going through and tweaking all those things. Just like we did on Bouncing Ball. We didn't go through and do every single thing. We set up some base movements and went back and refined and refined and refined. Okay, even this little pop that's happening here, that needs some refinement in there. Okay, I'm going to go to an earlier stage of this, which is, I think, 6. Sound off. I just want to pull up a certain part here. There it is. This is the part here that's doing it. Okay, even though we don't really see anything bad happening with the hand, there's some bad stuff happening with the hand, especially right here. Okay, if we watch the hand, we can see what it does right there. Okay, it did this kind of like weird little twist right there. And if you look at my controls here, 24, negative 160, negative 112, as I hit play, suddenly it's at 351, negative 96, negative 433. So you have to be careful of this stuff, that you don't accidentally keyframe this stuff kind of too far out of the realm. So what I'll do in this case is I'll zero these out, and then I'll just carefully reset this back into position. Boom, and boom. And you see my stuff is back to being at regular values. I'll reset my key, and you'll see that nothing funky happens there. Okay, and then this one is going to do something funky too, because this keyframe was derived from the previous one. So I have to make sure, again, I go through and reset these, and then I just reset up where those are at. Okay, go to the next one, same thing. Okay, you can see as I do it, it's getting worse and worse. So I want you to make sure that you're paying attention. You can see, look at these rotations here, 742. That's like a ridiculous amount of rotation on that hand. Okay, and that's why we're getting these funky kind of movements in here, because we don't have nice, clean rotations. Basically what's happening is his hand is rotating around over 360 degrees. Go again, keying it. Okay, and I'll make it turn out nice and neat just by doing that. Okay, you'll notice that on Steve Martin's feet here, I actually took a little bit of time and just kind of set up his foot movement. It still needs some work, but the basic foot posing is in there. Okay, the other guy still has his that he needs to have set up. There was a lot of tweaking that went involved in as far as like getting them to look like, see, like right here, look how close he is to this thing. That's like way too close for him to be inspecting this. If you ever check the oil on your car, it's actually down here. It's not way up there. So you can see where this master controller comes in handy to kind of nudge this stuff over. Okay, so it's lined up into the right spot. All right, so the rest of this is exactly that process of going through and just setting up those in-betweens. Now I like to focus on one character at a time in these kinds of scenarios. Okay, in this setup I can really deal with or focus on this inventor guy, I can't remember his name, focus on all of his movements, and then come back and focus on Steve Martin's movements. Okay, especially how like isolated they are from each other. But all these little like head bobs that Steve Martin does, all these waving and shifting of weight that this guy does, eventually I'd want to put that in my final piece. Okay, we may not get to the final piece in this class, just because it might take a lot longer than we have. Okay, it might take a month to get a good shot out of this whole thing. All right. Now notice here is the other thing I want to show, that his glasses kind of pop out. Okay, and his glasses pop out because this is that locator. I moved him back here like this, but I never moved his glasses back. Okay, so I have to make sure that I account for all the things that are in there. And once you watch the video on my animation stuff, you'll see what I'm talking about. Okay. Now, how do I get these exactly where they should be in position? Well, here's a little trick that you can use. If we go back a frame, here's where they are. If we go up a frame, they're up here. Okay. So I want to do what's called onion skinning, where I can see 2 frames at once. So what I can do is I'm going to grab the glasses and hit the up arrow. I'm going to go to Animate, Ghost is what Maya calls it, selected. And I'm just going to set this to custom frames. Oops, sorry, custom frame steps. And I'm going to say after I want 0 and before I want 1. And what this is going to do is it's going to give me 1 frame before my current frame. So if I hit Ghost, this frame that I'm looking at right here, this extra pair of glasses that's on him, is the frame before. So as I click this next frame, you can see here is my current frame, here is my last frame. So all I have to do is kind of move this into position here. Okay. And this is actually like the next frame, so it can be a little bit different. Okay, I just don't want it to be terribly different. Alright, so there's good. So I'm going to hit S to set a key. And you'll see that that ghosting follows it basically straight down. Oops. And then there's my other keyframe. I have to pull that off. Put this back in his hands. Make sure I go to my keyframe and then do that. There we go. Okay, so set a key there. Alright, so now his glasses are falling straight down. Okay, and again, there's more work that needs to be done. Let me turn my ghosting off. I typically just go to unghost all. There we go. In order to get them to look like a sliding off, they can't just fall off the side of his head like this. They have to roll off. Otherwise, if we look at here, we're going through the head. Yeah, we're going through the head there. Okay. So I want to come up like a couple frames and then just pull this out like that. Okay. Alright. So in the video about picking stuff up, I show how to get stuff to interact correctly. Right? So in this case, I have the pair of glasses. And I have, in this one, I've set up 3 different areas that are kind of locked to Andy. But in the video, I show how to do it as individual ones, which is the preferred method. If you don't do individual ones, you get into these little tricky areas of trying to set things up perfectly. And you really have to kind of make sure your stuff is locked in first. Because if you look at this here, you see his fingers are going through. I can't move his hand once this is locked to his hand. You see how it's locked to his hand? I can't adjust his hand here. All I can do is grab his fingers and adjust his fingers. Okay? So as you're doing those things, just be careful with them. That's middle and index. There we go. Now obviously his thumb should come up more. I don't even know if I can get his thumb to reach. I can't. Okay? So in this case, I actually have to break this connection and redo it. But again, this is just my initial pass of this. I always come back and do like a second pass or sometimes even a third pass, just to kind of tweak things further and further and further. Okay? As you're doing your animation stuff, keep in mind you're going to be doing several passes of this thing just to kind of get all of this stuff laid out in here as far as what the characters are doing. At Pixar, they'll actually go through and go to every single frame. Every single frame will have the animator's influence on it to make sure it's exactly, every single part of the character is exactly where they want it. But they don't start off going to frame 1, then 2, then 3, then 4. They block it out like this, and then they come back and say, okay, well, where do I need to start adjusting? Where am I seeing that the motion is not working correctly and I need to go back and I need to tweak it? And then they'll go through and they'll say, okay, well, at frame 94, let's say here, frame 94, he's bringing his hands straight up. Again, these hands should kind of come out and go in. So we'll grab the hands. And at frame, let's say 100, we'll pull them out and set a key. So now he comes out and pushes them on. Okay, so we want to do that entire thing, making sure it's nice and neat. You can see in this file he's still like leaning backwards. In the other file I adjusted it. Okay, so once you have your animation done, we want to do a couple things to render this stuff out. One, we want to make sure our Andy is at a suitable smoothing level. At proxy, which is going to be the quicker to preview thing, you'll see he's cut up. We don't want to render this. This is not the one to render. Okay, it's good to work with, but not to render. We want to make sure it's set to smooth, maybe even smooth 1. Okay, so we have a nice transition there. Same thing here. Smooth 1, so nice and smooth. I'm going to go and create a polygon plane. Make sure everyone's standing on the ground, which they should already be. Yes, they are. Good. I want to add some lights into my scene, so I'll go and create area lights. And you can use, obviously, mental ray, V-ray, whatever ray you want to use. And I don't know what kind of material I have on here. Just a Lambert, red Lambert. Okay, I'm going to keep it kind of simple. Throw me on there. Now obviously we're not going for photorealistic, so I need to worry about linear workflow. There we go. There's my blue car. Okay. I need to make sure that in my Andy shaders, and you've already gone through this on some of your other files, so why not do it again? I'm going to double click each one of these and just make sure that ambient color is turned off and reflectivity is turned off. Okay, reflectivity, ambient color. Now this is Andy's hair, which is just a Lambert, so we shouldn't have to deal with anything there. His iris, his pupil, his skin rim bright color. You may want to break the connection and get rid of that as well on the ambient. I haven't found that one to be too big of a deal. This one has incandescence for some reason. Okay, those are good. Here's his teeth. Here's his tongue. Alright, that should be good. I'm just doing a little test preview just to see what it's going to look like. Obviously blown out. These need to have some decay on them. Oops, I'll do this individually. Alright, just cranking up the light, obviously, just to get some more color or some light into the scene. Let's go to 6,000. There you go. Back to 4. And I'll just duplicate it, scoot it over. Okay, Andy over here is still really glossy. I'm going to go back into my hypershade and just make sure that my specular color is also turned down. In some scenes I found I didn't have to do that, but apparently in this one I do. Lambert shouldn't have it. Let's try that again. There we go, it's a bit better. Okay. And the car could use some smoothing on there. There we go. I thought my light would have shadows already turned on. Oh, I'm in Mental Ray, or Maya 2013, so no, why would they? First 30. I'm just doing just a simple light setup. This doesn't have to be anything complex. The focus is the animation. That's what we want to leave it about. There we go. Okay, let's go and duplicate this light just so I can add a little bit more light to my car. I'm going to bring this around to the front some more. There we go. Okay, I'm going to tweak the lights some more, but obviously you get the idea of we need to have some lights in here. Alright, so now I'm also going to look at my movie here. And I'll look at the camera angle. So first camera angle is right here for 70 frames, I believe, or 65. So I'm going to create a camera. I'm going to say perspective new. I'm going to set up my resolution to be 960 by 540. I'll click the blue circle. And I'll name this Steve Martin Cam. Okay. And then I'm going to go through from 1 to 70 and make sure I can see all the stuff I need to see. Okay. And just like they're doing, where they're kind of cropping in, you see how we're kind of adjusting the camera a little bit? I can do that as well. So here, like this, I have my Steve Martin camera selected, so I hit S. I go up to frame 70, 65-ish. And I can set a key on the camera. Let me go through and I'm going to change the tangents back to clamped. I'll do the same thing on my Steve Martin. Okay, let me look at my camera animation. It looks like it's just coming over a little bit too slow. So at the beginning of this, I'm just going to set this to linear and then have it flatten out at the end. There we go. Okay, so now let's look at the next camera move. Here's the inventor's camera. It's pretty much stationary, just showing this. For 295. So from, turn this off. So from 65, 66, new camera. There we go. So just about there. So that's good there. So let's go inventor. Cam. There's a little bit of a wobble in the camera if you look at the background objects. You can see some movement that's in here. So I could add that in as well, just kind of going through and say, okay, let's set a key. Here, let's go up to, I think it was 295. 295. We'll set a key there. And I'm just adjusting the camera a little bit, just kind of moving it to give me a little bit of kind of subtle shift. There we go. And then we would swap back to the Steve Martin camera for the end shot. Obviously they're closer inside there, so maybe I want to set a keyframe on my Steve Martin camera. I'll go to 295, or 290, doesn't matter. Go up a couple frames. And then have it right here. So that'd be my end camera as that. Okay, so now I have my two cameras, so what I want to do is I want to set this up. So I'm going to go here, I'm going to delete my information in this area. I'm going to call it OptiGrab underscore. And I'm going to right click and say insert camera name. Okay, that way if I'm rendering out the Steve Martin camera, it'll say Steve Martin. If I'm rendering out whatever, it'll render out whatever. Okay, that should be it. All right, so ifs, in this case, name.number.extension. What frame range? So for the inventor, I know his frame range is from about 65 to about 295. Okay, so inventor is going to be 65 to 295 for the inventor cam. And 6540, my quality is up, good. Everything else is good. I can add some in Final Gather if I needed to. And so I would go to my rendering menu and render out the inventor. Of course, I make sure that in here, my Maya batch gets up to the proper CPU usage, as we've talked about before. We got over 25, so we should be good. We'll find out in a minute. There it is, 5387, whatever. Okay, so now the inventor camera is going to go. It's rendering, it's doing all wonderful things. So I'm just going to end it because I don't need it to render out right now. All right, so I'd go through and render that. Then I would come through and I would render out. There's it right there, the Steve Martin camera, and I'd render it from frame 1 to 65. Oops. Make sure I change it in the right spot. 1 to 65. Hit render, let it go, and then come back and then do 295 until the end, which is 360. Okay, so I'd have 3 separate renders that I need to do for the Steve Martin camera. Okay, now the other alternative to this, and a couple of you have already latched onto the idea of using this, is in my directory here, I'm just going to make a new document, a new text document. And this works on a PC and it works on a Mac. The Mac needs a little bit more playing around to figure it out. But I'm going to call this render this .bat. Okay. And what this is going to do is it's going to be a mini program. If you're a program, this is going to be your first one. So, and it's not really a program, it's more scripting, but whatever. I'm going to right click and go to edit. And in here, I have to tell it that I want it to open up the Maya renderer, and I want it to go through and I want to render out whatever my last scene was, this one. Okay? So I'm going to go through and, I have to first tell it where the Maya renderer is. Okay? So I go to my computer and I go to the C drive and I go to Program Files and I go to Autodesk and I go to Maya 2013, that's the one it's in, bin. Inside here is the actual program that Maya uses to render. It's called render.exe. Okay, so I'm going to copy this address. So I'm just going to Control-C to copy it. I'm going to do a quotation mark, paste what I just did, /render.exe, quotation mark. Okay, so this tells it what program to open. Okay, and if I were to type in, the path to Photoshop, it would open up Photoshop when I double-click on this thing. All right, so the next thing we have to do is set our project, okay? So my project -proj, okay? So we do a space here, and then we insert what's called a flag. And this flag allows you to set up preferences or set up options. So I'm setting my project here. So where's my project at? Hit the back button. I'm going to go to my project directory and I'm just going to click the address bar and it'll show me my project directory. Okay, so I'm going to highlight everything and copy it. Do quotation marks, paste it, end quotation marks. So this is where my project is. Okay, now it might be getting a little bit cluttered. Let me go to my font and just shrink my font a little bit. Okay, now eventually it doesn't matter if this is all on one line. Okay, I'll show you that when I'm done. So I've told it where the renderer program is. I've set my project. So now what I can do is go in here and say, okay, well now I'm going to tell it which camera I want to use. And so the camera I'm going to use, let's say the Steve Martin camera. So I'll copy the name Steve Martin Cam. I'll do a space. I'll paste Steve Martin Cam. I'll tell it the start frame, which is 1. Tell it the end frame, which is 65. And then I will tell it the actual file name. And the file name I can just grab right from my scenes folder. It's always best to copy and paste, because that way there's less likely room for errors. Okay, so let's look at this in a... I'm just going to put spaces here, or returns here, so you can see what's going on. Okay, so there's 5 major components, 1, 2, 3, 4, 6 major components of this. First one, tell it where the renderer is. Next one, set your project. So we use the -proj flag, and we point it to our project directory. Then we do a -cam, tell it which camera we're using. Tell it what the start frame is we want to render, what the end frame is we want to render. These are the end frame flag and the start frame flag. And then tell it what file we're rendering. Okay, so now I'm just going to set my format back to a smaller one, like 8. There we go. And I'm just going to return everything back to being on one line. Or as close as I can get it to one line. My resolution is kind of small, so it's going to do that. Okay, so this chunk here is to render out one camera from 1 to 65. I'm going to insert a pause after this and then save this. So I just hit Control S, save. So now what I'm going to do is go back to my, I think it was in my movies folder. There it is. And I'm just going to double click this. And what's going to happen is it's going to run that little chunk of code that we just typed in. And it's going to go through and do some stuff. And you see, in this case, I get an error. And it says camera Steve Martin Cam does not exist. Okay, well, let me see what I did wrong. If I go to File, Save Scene As. Okay, maybe not that. Let me see what scene I'm actually working on. OptiGrab 06. Aha, see, I named it the wrong one. OptiGrab 05. So let me resave this one as. And I'll just even do this even neater, is final render. OptiGrab _ final render. Okay, so I'll just come back to my command line and hit enter or something. And then change the name of my file right here to OptiGrab final render. Okay, see, I typed the wrong name, or I chose the wrong name, and that's why it didn't work. So now I double click render this. And the good thing about doing this is that what it's going to do is it's going to render out camera 1, and then skip, go to camera 2, and then skip, and then go to camera 3. Okay, so you don't have to be here to change it every single time. You could set this up on a Friday, and as long as everything's typed correctly and there's no power outages, you should be good. Okay, so right now it's doing something. These are errors. Usually you get a bunch of errors. It doesn't matter. Okay, so I'm going to go into my images folder, and let's see, it's 1040. I'll probably start rendering that at 1039. So there is my first camera right here. So it's just rendering that out. Once I know it's rendering out, which it is right here, I can close this window and continue typing the rest of my stuff. Okay, so I'm going to delete this pause and then copy that line and paste it, enter, paste it. Okay, I have 3 separate cameras I'm rendering out. Okay, so my second camera is going to be, I'll just leave it at the Steve Martin camera, and I'll go from 295 to 360. Okay, same camera, everything's good there. My other one, I'm going to go from 65 to 295. Now I have to make sure too that I change the camera name for this one, okay? Because I have the inventor camera. So I'll copy that name, paste it, and save it, okay? So now here's the cool part is that in order to render out all this stuff, I double click, make sure it gets started, make sure everything is, my Maya batch gets up to over 30%. There it goes. So it's all the way up to whatever it is, 81 or so. I'm just going to set my priority below normal, and there we go. So now this is going to render. It's going to render camera 1, then it'll render out, it'll render out the Steve Martin camera from 1 to 65, then it'll render out the Steve Martin camera from 295 to 360, and then it'll render out the inventor camera from the remainder, 65 to 295, okay? So now I can just let that thing go. Just let it go all day long, all night long, however long it takes to render that stuff out. If it stops, let's say someone comes in, shuts the computer down, all I have to do is go back and edit this and say, oh, well, it got this one done, so I can just delete that one, okay? Or I can do this. This is a way to kind of ignore the line but keep it there, is we type an REM at the beginning of it, okay? Now remember, this is all one line. If I were to stretch this across both my screens, okay, this is one line right here. So REM at the beginning of a line means ignore. Okay, so I can say ignore the first line, that one rendered out fine. For the second line, let me shrink this back so you can see what I'm doing. My start frame is not 295, it actually got all the way to 350. So I'll say do 350 to 360, and then I can save it, and then just double click this again, and then it'll render out all that stuff again. Okay, starting at that endpoint. Okay, so it's a very cool way to do this kind of stuff. And again, we're always talking about ways that we can add, another skill to your list. Efficient rendering could be one of those skills. Okay, obviously in this case, these guys are really blown out. I want to fix my lighting before I go any further. And it still looks like I have some reflectivity happening here. I can probably just go into Maya. Here's how we cancel. Let's just close it. Go back into Maya and just go to my ray tracing and just turn reflections off. I don't need reflections in this case, so turn them off. And honestly, I don't need refractions. I just need shadows, so I'll just leave this set to, I don't know, 2 should be good enough. Okay, fix what I need to fix. My lighting, whatever it is, come back to my movie folder, double click render this, boom, it starts to go again. Okay, don't have to worry about deleting anything or doing anything special. It's very, very quick. Okay, it takes some setup in the first try. Obviously, you're not going to get it the first try, and if you do, it's just, if you're lucky, you're just really good. Okay, but try it out and see, because it's definitely worth investing the half hour or so it might take to do this in order for you to get a little bit more efficient rendering. Okay, and this can also work for multiple files. I could, if I had 7 projects due tomorrow, I could render out all 7 projects by just typing in their own project line here. So I could just copy this, let's say. We'll pretend that we're doing the walk cycle too. Alright. So my project, I'll just rename this right here. Let's say Andy Animation. Let's pretend that I named it walk cycle. Okay, so my project for walk cycle is walk cycle. My camera is, for that one, remember we're doing the front cam. From frame 1 to 300. There we go. So there's one camera, and there's my other camera. Now to save. I actually set this up to be front cam. So I set it to front or side. It's actually going to render out my front view. I don't want that. Alright, so then there we go. So I would save this, and I would render out all my animation stuff. Then I would come back and render out all my walk cycle stuff. So again, huge time saver. It's just a little bit of setup here. And once you understand this, it can really take you far as what you understand in there. There's also, I didn't go through all of them, Maya command line render flags. Maya command line render flags. And here are some of the other render flags in here. We can set the resolution. We can set the image name as it comes out. We can set the file type. Those are the ones that I know. You can even set your maximum number of adapted pixel samples. You can set your red channel contrast threshold. You can maximum number of reflections and refractions. So for one camera you can have shadows and for another one not. Motion blur on and off. Shutter angles. Okay, there's basically not everything, but a lot of things that you see inside of the render settings you can set inside that script and have them do things outside of that. And it's much simpler, and a lot of the people in industry are using this instead of the Maya batch, and they have been for years. This is something that goes back to, like, when I first started learning Maya, they had the command line renderer. Okay, so that's going to be it. Now once you get this into After Effects, let me open it up real quick. Alright, I have my clipped movie here. If you remember that we had this piece of footage that we cropped down originally. Okay, I can double click, bring in my other piece of footage, it's on my desktop, and D drive, Sarcona, 2540, work. Okay, I don't have everything in here because obviously I'm rendering it right now, so I'll just pretend. I'm going to ignore my alpha channel. That's what you'll be doing. And then you have to pay attention to this, which is your 30 frames per second. Okay? Remember that we can't have it at 30 frames per second because our audio is set to, if I click on this one, my audio is set to 23.976. Okay, or 24, just keep rounded. I'm going to right click on here, interpret my footage main, and tell it that I'm doing it at 24. Okay, now when I drop it in, there's not going to be anything here, and now when I drop it in, it'll match up perfectly. Okay, and what I actually want to do is not drop it into here, because that's obviously not going to be the right resolution, is I want to drop this into a new comp, drop my audio into that comp, which is the video, and I'm just going to turn off the video portion and just use the audio. Okay, now once this is fully rendered out, you'll see the effects of it. Preview, oh, I want comp settings. Okay, so now if I were to preview this, no, I can't parse it because I don't have the thing. Either way, I would have the audio inside here as well. Okay, oops, I grabbed the wrong one. I don't want to grab that one. I wanted to grab this one. My composition of it already cropped. That's what I want. No video, just audio.
Looks good to me, sir, but I'd like your opinion.
Yep, that's where it starts. Okay, so now I could crop this in. There we go. And then I could render this out. There it is, add to render queue. Okay, and then I make sure inside of my add to render queue that we choose QuickTime. Choose H.264. These are off. This is up. Choose audio output, and just like before, we want to look at our original footage. We want to look at this, back to that, and we want to see this is 44:1:32. So in this case, I want to do 44:32 and stereo. And for the format options, Qualcomm is pretty good. Apple Lossless is pretty good. I think I've used AAC before. Okay, so you can try one of those and see. A lot of these are going to be for different things. Sometimes, you know, music will come out better in some. Sometimes voice will come out better in some other ones. So a lot of times you have to play with these just to see which one is the best one. All right, so hit OK, render it out, and then boom, turn it in. Okay, so that's going to be the remainder of this. Make sure before you do any of the stuff on yours that you watch all three videos that are there. You watch the intro, you watch this one obviously, and then you watch the one on picking things up and character animate or facial animation stuff if you want to add that in there. Okay, and that's not a requirement to have your character pick things up or a requirement to have facial animation, but I want you to see it just so you're aware of what you need to do in order to do those kinds of things. Okay, so that